Throughout the day, Naomi felt the weight of unspoken judgments pressing down on her. She found herself assigned the most challenging and undesirable tasks while her white colleagues received straightforward cases. "Naomi, would you mind taking Mr. Johnson in room 305? A fellow nurse asked, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "He's been a bit challenging today." Naomi nodded, fully aware that challenging was an understatement. Mr. Johnson was notorious for his racist outbursts and had already brought 2 nurses to tears that week. Yet, Naomi approached the task with unwavering professionalism, determined to prove her worth. As she entered Mr. Johnson's room, bracing herself for the inevitable tirade, Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that this assignment was yet another test of her resolve, or worse, a setup for failure. "What are you doing here?" Mr. Johnson Street, St. Mary's General Hospital, a hallmark of health care in a wealthy suburban neighborhood, was about to face an unforeseen challenge. When Naomi Clark, an accomplished African-American nurse, joined the staff, she was unaware of the deep-rooted biases she would confront. As tensions rose and conflicts emerged, a seemingly ordinary patient named Michael Thompson lay quietly in his hospital bed, but he was far from just any patient. His presence was poised to instigate change. What hidden influence did this enigmatic patient possess, and how could one nurse's battle spark institutional transformation? Before we explore this story, comment below with where you're tuning in from today. If you appreciate tales filled with unexpected turns and moments of justice, don't forget to subscribe. The immaculate halls of St. Mary's General Hospital shimmered under the harsh fluorescent lights as Naomi took her first steps inside. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic and an undercurrent of tension that made her stomach churn. Despite her anxiety, Naomi squared her shoulders and lifted her chin, determined to leave a positive impression. Approaching the nurse's station, Naomi noticed the abrupt silence that enveloped the area. Conversations dwindled to murmurs, and eyes quickly averted as if they feared contact. She swallowed hard, pushing down the familiar isolation threatening to engulf her. "Excuse me," Naomi said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I'm Naomi Clark, the new nurse. Could you direct me to the head nurse's office?" A blonde nurse looked up, her blue eyes widening slightly before a practiced smile emerged. "Of course," she replied, her tone polite yet cool. "Down the hall, 3rd door on the right." Naomi nodded, making her way down the corridor, acutely aware of the eyes tracking her. The sound of her shoes echoed like thunder in the unnaturally quiet space. As she neared the office, a tall, distinguished man in a white coat exited a nearby room. His salt and pepper hair and commanding presence marked him as a senior physician. Naomi's heart raced with hope. Perhaps this was her chance to forge a positive connection. "Good morning, doctor," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Naomi Clark, the new nurse starting today. It's a pleasure to meet you." The doctor's steel-gray eyes scanned her, his expression impassive. "Dr. James Barrett," he replied curtly. "I trust you've been properly oriented to our protocols." Before Naomi could respond, Dr. Barrett continued, "We maintain very high standards here at St. Mary's. I hope you're prepared to meet them." Without waiting for a reply, he brushed past her, leaving Naomi standing alone in the hallway, her outstretched hand slowly dropping to her side. The encounter left her feeling deflated, but Naomi refused to let it dampen her spirits. Taking a deep breath, she squared her shoulders and knocked on the head nurse's door. While waiting for a response, her mind wandered back to nursing school, her mother's voice echoing in her memory. "Baby girl, you're going to have to fight twice as hard as everyone else, but never let them see you sweat. You come from a long line of strong women, and you've got that same strength in you." Naomi recalled late-night study sessions, extra hours in the lab, and the constant pressure to prove herself, along with the dismissive glances from some professors and the raised eyebrows when she excelled. Amid whispered remarks from classmates doubting her place, Naomi persevered. She graduated at the top of her class, her determination and skills silencing even the most critical voices. Now, standing in the halls of St. Mary's, Naomi drew strength from those memories. She had faced challenges before and would do so again. The door opened to reveal a stern, middle-aged woman. "Miss Clark, I presume," she said, her tone clipped. "Come in. We have much to cover, and I expect you to keep up." As Naomi followed the head nurse into the office, she felt she was stepping into more than just a new job. The hospital's atmosphere seemed charged with tension, like a silent storm brewing beneath the facade of professionalism. Little did she know, her presence would soon become a catalyst for change, challenging long-standing biases and exposing the toxic culture hidden behind St. Mary's prestigious exterior. Naomi's first day flew by in a whirlwind of orientations, introductions, and paperwork. As she navigated the hospital, she noticed subtle signs of her exclusion. Conversations fell silent as she approached, only to resume in hushed tones once she passed. Her attempts at small talk with fellow nurses met with polite but distant responses, making her feel like an outsider in what should have been a collaborative space. By the time her shift ended, Naomi felt mentally and emotionally drained. While gathering her belongings from her locker, she overheard two nurses whispering around the corner. "Did you see the new hire?" one murmured. "Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking," the other replied. "This isn't exactly the neighborhood for—" Naomi's hand froze on her locker door, her heart sinking. She had hoped the initial coldness was just first-day nerves, but the reality was painfully clear. This wasn't just a new job, it was a daily fight against prejudice and misconceptions. As she left the hospital, the weight of the day pressed heavily on her shoulders. Walking to the bus stop, Naomi's mind raced with emotions. The excitement she felt that morning had transformed into a gnawing sense of doubt and isolation. Sitting on the hard plastic bench, she pulled out her phone and dialed a familiar number. After 2 rings, a warm, comforting voice answered. "Hey, baby girl, how was your first day?" Hearing her mother's voice brought tears to Naomi's eyes. She took a shaky breath, determined not to break down in public. "It was challenging, Mama," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. A moment of silence followed before her mother spoke again, filled with understanding and strength. "Naomi Marie Clark, you listen to me. You've worked too hard to let anyone make you feel less than you are. Remember who you are and where you come from. You're not just there for yourself. You're there for every little black girl who dreams of being in those halls one day." Naomi closed her eyes, letting her mother's words wash over her. "I know, Mama. It's just, I didn't expect it to be this hard." "Nothing worth doing is ever easy, baby," her mother replied. "But you have the strength of generations behind you. Hold your head high, do your job better than anyone else, and don't you dare let them see you falter. Do you hear me?" "Yes, Mama," Naomi said, feeling a renewed sense of determination. "I hear you." As she ended the call, Naomi noticed a sleek black Mercedes slowed as it passed the bus stop. Through the tinted windows, Naomi caught a glimpse of Dr. Barrett, his eyes locking onto hers for a fleeting moment before the car sped away. Naomi squared her shoulders, her mother's words echoing in her mind. Though she was facing an uphill battle, she was far from alone. With the strength of her family behind her and her determination to prove herself, Naomi knew she could withstand whatever challenges St. Mary's presented. As the bus approached, Naomi stood ready to tackle another day. Little did she know that her presence at St. Mary's would soon trigger a series of events that would challenge the hospital's cultural foundations, exposing long-hidden biases and forcing a reckoning that was long overdue. The following weeks unfolded like a slow-burning fuse, each day adding more tension to Naomi Clark's already difficult work environment. The initial coolness she encountered had transformed into a more insidious form of exclusion, one that was harder to define but impossible to ignore. As Naomi made her morning rounds, she noticed a stark difference in how she was treated compared to her white colleagues. Dr. Barrett, in particular, seemed to take pleasure in finding fault in her work, regardless of her diligence. "Nurse Clark," Dr. Barrett called out one morning, his voice cutting through the busy nurses' station. "I hope you've familiarized yourself with our protocols by now. We can't afford any mistakes." The emphasis he placed on mistakes sent a chill down Naomi's spine. She met his gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. "Of course, Dr. Barrett. I assure you I'm fully versed in all hospital procedures," she replied, her voice steady. Dr. Barrett raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "We'll see about that, won't we? Let's hope you learned everything you need to here." The barely concealed condescension in his tone didn't escape Naomi or the other nurses, who pretended to be busy while obviously eavesdropping.